Miss Amanda Timpson, we scored the interview right here. Welcome to Doug in Exile. She was there early on before anyone knew about Fani Willis. Amanda Timpson was there. And she's the one who Fani Willis fired and had the security guards walk her out of the room. I have a very special guest, Miss Amanda Timpson, who is going to walk us through some of the Fani Willis news. That's how you guys would know her. We've already talked about her on this show. This is the first time we've had a interview with Miss Amanda Timpson. How do I call you Miss Timpson? Do I call you Amanda? What's your title? What do you do? Welcome to Doug in Exile.
Hey, Doug. You can just call me Amanda.
I'm just going to cut back in real quick to let you know that there is a GoFundMe to raise money for Miss Timpson. If you want to donate to help her efforts, if you want to give her a big win, the link is below. This is what the screen will look like. When you click that link, it'll take you to GoFundMe, and you can just click a button and make a donation. Okay, so let's start. Let's go back in time to the beginning. What's the first job that you had that got you kind of put in that or around that DA office? What was the grant you were trying to get? What was the job you were trying to do? How were you trying to help these inner city kids or people in Fulton County?
So in 2018, I was hired as the Director of Gang Prevention and Intervention. This was under the previous administration, Paul Howard. And so in that capacity, so a little bit, let me scoot back. So I am from LA or from California.
My people.
Right. And I did a lot of gang prevention and intervention for years prior to moving here to Atlanta. And so when I moved here to Atlanta, I started teaching middle school because there was no really gang prevention jobs. And so I started teaching middle school for a few years, and I did that for 4 years. And then I saw a gang prevention job come across my view, and I was like, I absolutely want to be a part of the solution here in Atlanta. And so I applied for that position under the Paul Howard administration and went through a rigorous interview process, and ultimately I was selected for this position. Just
Did
a little
they
bit
want
about
you because you had LA experience, because you had the California experience, that the actual more urban experience?
Yeah. So I worked when I was in LA, I worked as a part of the largest youth diversion program in the country. And so I'm sure that was an allure to it. Also, I grew up and experienced gang culture and had those experiences myself. And so I think my own personal experience coupled with my education and my professional background made me useful. And
so you're qualified. I'm just saying you're qualified at what you do, but I guess my bigger question is why would you want to do that? Why would you specifically want to go in and stop gang prevention? What opened your heart or your mind to that whole thing?
So growing up, I experienced a lot of loss due to gang activity, loss of friends, loss of family members. What really kind of shook me to my core when I was about 20 years old, I was pregnant with my first child, and my son's biological father is now on death row in California due to gang activity. And I just wanted to be a part of the solution. I had seen it and all the negativity that it could bring. And then when it touched my life specifically, and I was like, whoa, this is a lot, all while trying to, become a mother and learning all the things that come with being a mother. And I just wanted to be a part of the solution. I didn't want my son to have to live in a world where that was just kind of expected of him. So I absolutely made it a part of my life's work and my passion. So it's never been just a job for me. Also, growing up, I kind of was those kids. I made a lot of really bad decisions, and I graduated from an alternative school, and I had a little bit of touch and go with just being a hot mess. And so I
That's right.
wanted
That's
to.
right. But you had some time being raised in Compton, or having a background in Compton. My dad, he was from Inglewood, like there. Went to all black school. My dad was white, but there was always like this. What people don't understand about gangs in a way in LA is, first of all, it was much worse in the 80s.
Absolutely.
Much more like just big and sexy and popular before kind of all this gang awareness comes. And I think a lot of the fallout, even with hip hop music, with like Long Beach Crips versus Bloods, and kind of, and the violence of Tupac and Biggie Smalls and all that going down, I think that ended up being a big eye opener for both white and black culture on, hey, gangs, they were cool. They were or a coping mechanism for families to try and find connection on the street. And then there was always a dark side to it. That's all. It's just not. I don't. When people hear the word gang, they think like some guy's walking around in camo or in his colors all day, just doing crime all day, has nothing to do with family or a community culture or anything. And that's just not. That's not its allure.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
It's what made it famous, but it's not its allure.
Absolutely. And so that's why I was, drawn to wanting to be a part of this solution, was because I knew that the roots of why youth join gangs are usually trying to fill a familial void, trying to fill a void of poverty. And a lot of people don't like to hear that part because they see the crime part and they're like, oh, we just care about the crime. We can't lock away the problem because financially it doesn't make sense. At some point, we have to prevent and intervene and divert.
Right.
It's just fiscally sound, but also on a humanistic standpoint. If that was your child, you would want a program that was designed to try to intervene. Does it work for everybody? No. But yeah. I have seen lives completely changed. I am a product of that. And so I wanted to be that for
Amanda,
others.
I only care if it works. It's like my thing is I hate the idea of we're spending money on stuff that doesn't work. I myself, I'm a Republican, conservative, fiscally conservative. I'm like, well, we spent too much money on this, this state crap. That's usually my point of view, until I was in California, in LA, and my son, they thought right around when he was 3 or so, they thought he might have been diagnosed with apraxia or some kind of autism. He wasn't, but I'm just saying they were looking at him. And so I was so afraid to take him to the state, where they were going to do tests and they were going to help him with physical therapy and occupational therapy. And, they worked with my son. The state did, paid for it for 3 months, and turned my son around, like gave him way more coordination. And I go, these people are good, professional. They need funding. It's not all a scam. So I'm just saying that you're one of the people who, when I first heard your story, and this all came out when the recording of Fani Willis came, and I saw that she was giving you trouble, you were trying to hold her. I go, this is like a true believer. Like, she is really, you're pushing for this money can't be misappropriated and spent on computers. It can't be spent on other things. You have to protect that money in any office because everyone wants at the cheddar. And you probably know how rare it is to get that money, especially that amount of money out in Fulton County, Georgia. Out in Georgia is insane. So you have to build this. You wanted to build, was it a youth center specifically that you were trying to get opened?
Yes. So Fulton County, and I believe it was before I came on. So I think it was 2017. They gifted the DA's office I believe it was 7,000 square foot building. It was previously it was the West Fulton Mental Health Center, and they gifted us this building for whatever we needed. And Mr. Howard saw that there was an increase in gang violence, specifically with youth, gang and gun violence. And so he wanted to make it the Fulton County Gang Prevention and Youth Empowerment Center. And so what we were going to do in this center was a lot. We had 12 trades. So everything from mechanic to barbering to culinary arts to audio engineering, all of these trades would be housed out of this building. therapeutic. A lot of these youth are dealing with trauma, and sometimes they don't know how to deal with it because they're kids. And so we have therapeutic services on board. It had a huge yard, so we were going to do a large community garden where the youth who had already been adjudicated
Cool.
to do community service could do their community service on site, and a day room where we would hire a full staff, a full-time teacher to be on staff for our youth who are getting suspended from school. So they're not running around with their parents are at work, and they're not running around the community when they're suspended or something like that. So there was multiple layers to the community center to where we really believed that the center would have a huge impact on the community. Also, we offered a community like interventions through a parent university where we could educate parents and of what's going on with gang trends, youth and social media, and all of these things. What is it to be a party to a crime? How to really educate yourself, because parents don't always know what's going on. Your kid is usually a little bit of a different person than who they are around you when they're not with you, right?
I got 4 kids. And
yes.
teens. They're you ask them what's going on your phone over there, and they look at you like
nothing.
I go, why don't you let me in? Let me in your life. Let's find out what's going on. So you had all this optimism going. The previous guy loses. They bring in Fani Willis. You got a new boss, or are you separate from her but in the boss? Was she getting swapped out as a new boss, a new authority figure? Did she have authority over jurisdiction over your money and your job?
So we applied for the grant that was going to help fund programming out of this center in October, the very last week in October of 2020, and she won a week later. So we wouldn't have gotten those grant funds until it was under her jurisdiction.
Sure.
And so when she won the election, she sent the office out this like office-wide email and told us all like, hey, everybody will be guaranteed an interview. Here's my new organizational chart. Pick something that works for you. You're not guaranteed a job. When I saw the organizational chart, I saw that my position had been abolished. My entire unit was abolished. So even if I wanted my job, it no longer existed.
So was Fani Willis the authority figure that was setting up those what jobs were available? Was she the authority figure? So it really was something that she was not. She may be interested in working with the inner city, but she's not interested in that technique. Whatever you were doing, she vanished your job out, right?
Yes, exactly.
Okay. So it's like, get the hint. Now you got to slide into my agenda with one of these other slots if you fit in, right?
Yes.
Okay.
And so I applied for 3 jobs. And on November 20th of 2020, I had an interview in front of a 9-person panel. And one of the things that a lot of people asked me was like, who's on your panel? Was Nathan Wade on your panel? He was on my panel. He, Fani, and Jeff DeSantis were the leaders of the interview, but then there was 6 others who chimed in. And so it went really well. And December 9th of 2020, I received my invitation to her administration as a member of her executive leadership team in the role of the director of juvenile diversion. So it was now kind of an expanded role. So I didn't just focus on gangs. I focused on all adjudicated youth within Fulton County.
Sure. Very cool. Okay. And so you had early exposure to Nathan Wade, who apparently she would have hired, right, to have been on that board for approval. He would be an early hire.
I believe so. I don't have intricate knowledge of that, but
none of us are claiming knowledge or anything. I'm just saying, speculating that if he's there doing approvals and he's a trusted person in her thing to be an authority on who gets in and who's out, right?
Right. I would
You're
assume
standing
as
before
an attorney,
him.
right? I would assume as an attorney and taking probably tens of 20 of hours to do interviews, I would assume he wasn't doing it for free.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, he has a great history with Fani Willis. That's all I'm going to say.
Right.
Now, uh, so at some point they got this new it was a online talent or a media director guy, some guy doing social media buys. Who was
Yes.
he? The guy that initially wanted to spend the money on computers, or was that someone else? Who in the
Yes, it
office am
was
I
him.
talking about?
So his
What's his
name was
name?
Michael Cuffey.
Okay,
Yes.
Michael Cuffey.
So originally during her when she was doing her campaign, he was her media specialist or her social media guy.
And where
And
did they get him? Where did Michael Cuffey come from?
I don't know. I never knew him before he became my supervisor.
I
So
believe he had other. I think I did a story on him having other ties somewhere, but I now I can't remember, so I won't go into that. But this guy was one of the guys that you were complaining about, right? Because where he wanted to spend money versus you.
correct. So he became my supervisor. So he was the chief programs officer. And so myself and my colleague, we met with him in early March just to kind of discuss the scope of the grant. And the grant was very specific, so specific that we just in the grant we outlined like the gang issues, so we kind of narrated that, and then we talked about the specific zip codes where gang activity was higher. We talked about the schools that they fed into, and then talked about servicing youth 12 to 17 specific to those areas in those gangs in those schools. So it was very specific, and it was only for programming, so we couldn't spend any money on equipment. So immediately
Yeah.
when he started
Grants
talking,
are all written this way. It's to keep you from spending it on stuff that you're not supposed to do. It is called out flat out, and you knew this was called out. You cannot buy equipment. You cannot buy computers with this. This is where the limitations of this, where you can get your money and buy equipment with something else, but not with this money.
exactly. And
Okay.
so the at
and
first it
that's
wasn't
normal for grants. That's a normal government grant wording.
absolutely,
Okay.
especially when grants are coming from like the DOJ, because this was a DOJ grant. It came from the Office of Juvenile Justice and Delinquency Prevention. It's a federal grant, right? So they want specificity and they want follow through. And so when he wanted to spend it on, frivolous things, I let him know like, hey, we can't do that. I'm not sure if you read the grant, but it's very specific to programming. There's no equipment. And immediately I was met with pushback. He told me the people in the DA's office do refer to Fani as Madam DA or Madam Willis. And so he was like, this is Madam's vision. And I was like, all right. I mean, I get it, but you
Yeah.
know,
Yeah, I
you
get it.
know,
I get it. I understand where Fani Willis is coming from almost perfectly. Like she's the one. I get her. I'm an artist, man.
right. So,
You'll call me Master Tenaple while you're at it. Madam
right,
Willis.
right.
All right, I get it.
So he made it clear that it was her vision. And I just kind of made it clear that, okay, I understand that's her vision. This was written prior to her taking office. And I just wanted to make sure that we were in alignment with the grant. Also, didn't was not only one of the co-authors on the grant, but I was also the director on the grant. I'm not going to go to federal prison for anybody. My family needs me. This
That's
is
right.
not how the grant needs to be spent. And so, and I feel like just how we kind of talked about my ties and how I got into this work. I really truly felt like, how could I look myself in the mirror and claim to be who I claim to be if I went along with this? Or
Yeah.
like, okay, whatever. I do think that my moral compass just was like, hey, it doesn't matter if it's her vision. I just want to make sure that ultimately it's spent the right way. I want to follow up. I want to make sure that we are all on the up and up in this. And that's what I did. And so when it was brought up multiple times of like, no, this is what we're going to do. It was multiple times of like, hey, nah, we can't do that. And I probably sounded like a broken record, wasn't trying to be annoying. I just wanted to make sure we were doing what was right.
Yeah, that's another thing. That's another thing I heard was a woman to woman conflict, which makes my skin crawl in an office. But I get it. You have to stake out this ground, kind of. But Miss Timpson has a GoFundMe site where you can help fund. This goes to her legal fees and things like that for her fight for justice. It's called Fulton County Whistleblowers Fight for Justice. Throw her some money. I know my audience is good for it. Thank you, guys. So now we can go forward.
Okay.
But this is going to take a second. So now, right? So now you and her have an office conflict. She's the boss. She's Madam Willis, and you're just Amanda Timpson, and you've got to fight for this money. She put people in charge of you, and they're starting to misuse your money. They want to spend your money on stuff, mugs or happiness or whatever they want to spend it on. It could even be really good things, but it's not within the confines of the grant that you agreed to, that you'd be held federally accountable if you spent it wrong.
Absolutely, as a director.
This is the first part of many parts to help tell her story. We're going to tell it right here in Exile. I've got much more footage to show you. This interview, I had to cut it off just for time, but thank you guys for watching. What do you guys think? Will Miss Amanda Timpson find justice in Fulton County? I'm Doug.